Amex is a spend-centric business model, they call it. Because they control their own network, they earn both the swipe fee and they earn interest on the loans if you revolve a balance. But in general, the economy is slowing, and Amex is the GDP plus growth company. So the reality is their business is going to slow down along with the economy.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested here because when I think about Amex, I think about it as being for maybe the more higher end, and you would think that they have essentially expendable income to swipe. So what really is the issue here?
Yeah, so if you take a look at their demographics, most of the growth now is being driven by Gen Z and millennial spenders, and their sort of Gen X and Boomer category is really not spending very much. So that's typically the more affluent consumer, and so maybe they're just looking out and seeing some choppiness ahead that younger people aren't seeing. And so as long as the younger cohort can keep spending, and Amex can keep driving that with their big marketing spend on things like airport lounges and travel rewards, then maybe they can sustain some growth. But ultimately, as the economy slows, so will Amex.
How does Amex perform vis-a-vis Visa and Mastercard? How do investors think about differentiating these companies?
Yeah, so they're sort of similar and different. They're in the same business, and Amex is also in the sort of the business of actually making loans. Visa and Mastercard, they're just the payments rails. So Amex has about 50% of its revenue, which it earns from the payments rails. So in that sense, it sort of mirrors Visa and Mastercard, but they lack the credit risk. So there's less downside. People start to default on their credit card loans. Visa and Mastercard are not going to share in that downside, but as things slow, all three companies are going to see less volume and less income from swipe fees.
So I see Amex is up about 45% this year. I'm interested to know how other specific parts of is business are doing. I mean, of course, it has that partnership with Delta. That's the card that I have. How are those things working out for it?
Yeah, so they, a big part of what drives Amex, right, is they spend $6 billion a year on marketing, and they revamp 10, 20, 30. This year, they revamped 40 of their credit cards, where they like to increase the sort of value proposition for users. So Delta used to drive a much larger percentage of new card acquisitions, but now the Platinum card is the main driver. That's what all the sort of Instagram influencer types are out there advertising, and that's where they're picking up a lot of their new customers.
Talk to us about their comments on the global business, U.S. versus non-U.S. Are there trends similar or are they different around the world?
Yeah, so international is a real bright spot. It's growing much faster than in the U.S., and that's mostly the base effect. They're much smaller penetration in international markets, but the economics of credit cards are much less favorable abroad. So Amex is taking in something like 2.3% of the transaction when you swipe in the U.S., and it's much lower abroad. So even though they're growing at a 13, 14% clip internationally, it's not going to be enough to offset slowing U.S. growth. Just because it's a smaller part of the business and it's less profitable.
What's been the sentiment around the benefits that Amex offers? I know that they've had some pullbacks, especially as to who has access to lounges and things like that. What's been the general readout?
Yeah, so they've been devaluing a little bit some of the value propositions in the card, and I think that's been driving sort of anecdotally a little bit of negative sentiment amongst sort of like the high frequency, credit card churners. People are out there, really at the margins applying for every different credit card. But I think ultimately, people are getting more value than they pay in annual fees from the cards. And Amex has been very good about adding new benefits on a sort of every couple of years clip that attract people and keep people interested in the card. And every year their average card fee grows, which is evidence that they're succeeding. This quarter was $105 per card. Obviously, the Platinum is at almost $700. So there's plenty of room to run, and that's a big part of their success.